Heart to Hearties. This is the official after show for the Hearties, and we love bringing your questions to the cast and crew. I am Marg Stark from San Diego, California.
I'm Annette from South Carolina.
Hey, Hearties, Jeanette from Michigan.
We
And
could
I'm
not
Pascale.
She's here. And I just have to say, because we're bringing the Hearties, Heart to Hearties to the airwaves, and you're bringing Hope Valley to the airwaves this season. So it's very exciting, the Hope Valley Radio Hour. So thank you for joining us on our little radio show.
You're welcome.
This is actually the fourth time that you've done Heart to Hearties.
I can't believe that. You mentioned that in the email, and I was like, really? 4? I feel like I honestly feel like I've only done 2, but I'll take your word for it. You, I'm sure, know.
Us 4 times, and I feel like we were so wet behind the ears when we're still quite wet behind the ears. But the big news this season is that we're now a podcast. We are officially on Apple and wherever you can find your podcasts, Hearties. So if you want to be in the car listening, if you want to work out and listen, it's available to you. So
fantastic.
I know, it's exciting.
We can't avoid that podcast word anymore. We were like, we're just chatting. I think we didn't want the pressure on ourselves, and now we're just owning it. We're owning it.
I know, it's so true. We were like,
you should.
We're having little chats, and now it's like real.
So we're still reeling from last night's new episode, all new episode. There was a lot going on, a lot to love. I have to say, visually, everything was so beautiful, from Allie's party to we had Lucas in the field with the cow. Can we talk about that? Was he looking great or what?
His hair in particular in that scene. My goodness. Really seeing Lucas a little like tousled. It was a very good look on him.
Yeah, I don't think Hearties hated that one. Everybody enjoyed that piece. And then we loved the visual where you and Elizabeth learned to dance with Mei Su. Cinematically, everything is just looking gorgeous this season. I mean, what's going on over there? How are you loving the new visual look there?
I mean, I've always thought, as far as picturesque, I've always felt like we've done a good job on that. Like, I felt like our directors have done, and our cinematographer have always done a wonderful job at really making Hope Valley look beautiful, breathtaking. That's always been there. But it's funny that you use the word cinematic, because that is something that I do feel like is different this season. And I don't know that I was actually aware that that was happening while we were filming it, to be totally honest. Like I didn't know that until I think I started doing ADR, which is the sound looping that we do after the show, after we film it. Certain episodes are heavier on looping just for whatever was going on. And then I started seeing some of the special things that our directors had been putting into place. And I was like, what is going on? This is like a whole new show in the best possible way. And the one that stood out to me was the one from this episode where me and Mei Su and Elizabeth are all learning to dance. And it goes into that slow-mo, which I don't think ever seen on our show before. I just thought it was so special and beautiful and joyous, like truly so joyous. And I love it. I love it. I think it's amazing that we're doing that. And we're going to see more of that as the season progresses. Little moments like that. And what I think makes them really pop is that it's not like we've suddenly changed the way we're filming the show overall. There's like hand-selected moments that are going to be filmed in a different way to really make them pop. That was one, and there's some more coming up. And I just think it's being used very acutely, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like the kind of thing that if you do too much of it, kind of like with extreme
Mm.
close-ups on actors.
Yes,
You do
it
too
suddenly
much of it, it
becomes
kind of
like that's
loses
all
it.
anybody can focus on, and that's all
Yeah.
anybody that's all you can see. Or like even when there was a era, I think in the early 2000s, where it was like a lot of quick cuts, like quick, and you actually didn't even know what was happening, and it was exciting at first, and then it was distracting. And
Yes.
so I think when you use it sparingly, it's more effective.
So
And
cool.
it was amazing how just that little bit of slow-mo to that scene somehow captured the joy so much more. It's like it was so
Totally.
clearly a joyful scene, but just that little effect.
Yes.
It was
Yes,
so
Was that
cool.
I
the only
agree.
difference? Because it felt like the room was almost spinning
Yeah.
around.
Well, we did use a steady cam, and so
Okay.
I mean, the actual filming of it, we felt like idiots because they just said, just keep going, just keep dancing. And our camera operator who runs the steady cam, he was like moving in a circle kind of with us and then down at our feet. And like, it was all very organic and very fluid, but it went on for a long time, like too long, where we're like, this is crazy. Like, we just feel like idiots now, but we just kept on our smile and we're like looking at, yeah, here we go. And so, part of why I think I loved it so much is because my experience of filming it was not like, oh, this is gonna be so cinematic. I was like,
Right.
I'm gonna have egg on my face for this whole scene. And then it wasn't that at all. It was very beautiful.
Well, and for Hearties at Home, this was a little sneak peek that they showed in Kansas City at the Hallmark Christmas Experience. So it had to be, I don't remember if you were in that panel, Pascal, where if you got to see Hearties' reaction watching the sneak peek, but
I
Jill,
watched that sneak peek so many times.
okay, so you were definitely
Kansas
there.
City. And so I really feel like I know that sneak peek because I really did see, I think I saw it 5 times that weekend. And so yeah,
So
I saw
yes,
it.
you definitely saw it.
And you saw it.
Yeah.
Well, and Jillian Profeta from Hallmark Channel had kind of, said that it was like one of her favorite scenes when she would get the dailies on
Yes.
that. So that was really neat.
Well, and it wasn't until I saw this scene were Chris and Kevin doing an impression in Kansas City
Yes.
of you. So that's what I
Yes.
couldn't figure
Yes.
out. Like I've seen their dance like 100 times, probably as many as you saw your preview. But I didn't get when they were going slow mo. I was like, what? Until I
Yes,
saw.
and Kevin
So-
doing the like,
Yes. Ah. So was that you or was that supposed to be Aaron?
You know what? I didn't ask for clarification
Okay,
because I
good.
didn't want to know who
Right.
that specifically was
Yes,
supposed to
right.
be impersonating.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense now. It's
Oh
hilarious.
yeah, it was a big hit. It was a big hit.
Hilarious.
Well, one of the other things that we really love, Ellie Devereaux wrote this episode. We should point that out. And we love when the writers sort of have the characters say what a lot of Hearties are thinking. So now that Rosemary and Bill are working together again, we love that scene with when Nathan says, "It's so great to seeing the two of you work together again." And all the Hearties are like, exactly.
Yeah.
So how is that? I mean, were you loving being back together on a crime case or?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. I think it was a bit of a no-brainer after the pairing last season was so successful, and it just brought out such a fun dynamic between. It's a dynamic that I don't think we've ever seen really with Jack or with Bill. And it just just made sense when you put those two together. And so I think as soon as that stuff started airing last season, I think the writers and Jack and I and Hallmark were all like, okay, well, we're definitely going to continue that into the next season because it just worked so well. So it did feel good. I'm glad that we're starting the case of the gold coins and trying to get to the bottom of it. And I think there's a little less, there's a lot less resistance of Bill to Rosemary. How, in fact, he's the one who solicits her help in this situation, but he also appreciates and validates and her contributions, and not reticently. Like he now is like, no, you've got great contributions. And she's just still so delighted to be in the know.
Yeah. And the look that the two of you give each other when he says, it's so great, are kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, we like it too. You know,
Yeah,
it's really
yeah.
sweet.
I loved
well-
the theatrical nature of the way that you were laying it out for Nathan, but then you were
Yes.
like, well, that's what Bill told me. You know, it was like, it was such a cute, I don't know, it was adorable.
Yeah, yeah.
fun.
Well, I thought when I saw how, like, I mean, that's Allie's writing. And so when I saw that how Rosemary was laying out the details, I think it was pretty obvious to everyone, like, these were not Jack's words, like, or Bill's words. Like, there's
Right.
no way Bill told this story in this manner.
Yes,
And
no.
so Rosemary's, and then that was actually Jack's idea to kind of pace back and forth and just do like correcting Rosemary just every so often, or being like, like, and so letting her kind of run with it, but also trying to keep her on course.
So good.
darling.
Oh, really good.
Fun.
Well, we do have a hearty question from Samantha Schubach from Parker, Colorado, who, how adorable is this? She told us she's only 12 years old. And she wants to know, what should we most look forward to in this coin caper mystery with Bill Avery?
I think I would say the thing that I think is the most fun is there is a certain element of kind of undercover role play that transpires as this investigation, and it plays out perhaps not as our viewers would expect, which I always love. I love it when there's kind of an obvious route and we do a slight variation on that. And so I think that that's going to be very, very fun. And it ends up involving a few people that you might not expect. And so that to me would be the most fun thing that's going to play out.
Well, we have another question from Brian Shively of Lake Havasu, Arizona. He really enjoyed the one-on-one conversation between Nathan and Rosemary earlier this season. Is there any recognition between your characters that your father was a Mountie?
I know. So no, that doesn't play in yet, but that is a key thing. And it was definitely a key element in terms of Rosemary and Jack's connection, the fact that they had grown up together and that both their fathers were Mounties. And so, I hope that plays into it. And I too really enjoyed that scene. And I thought it was just nice to see their connection. And I think their connection ultimately stems from how much they both care about Elizabeth, but that's really kind of unifying and bonding them. And I really loved that as well.
Yeah, that was wonderful. We have another question from Sonia Garza of Waco, Texas. She says, you are her favorite actress on the show. And she wonders if you could tell us about a moment in season 12 when you improvised and that you think worked out especially well.
Well, I can think of a few. They're tiny little moments. Like my thing is I rarely go way off course and improvise a ton. But there's two moments. One is because this just aired, not in the episode that people would have just seen, but 2 weeks ago, where Rosemary and Elizabeth go skulking off into the forest, following Lee and Hickam, and Rosemary's trying to get to the bottom of this, another mystery, a mystery of her own life and her own husband. And so then there's the moment where we come running out of the bushes, and we think there's a bear, and Lee's now caught Rosemary, and she's trying to play it off like, no, this is all fine. And then he explains it. He lays it all out and says, this is what is going on. And then there's a moment where Rosemary completely flips on a dime, right? She's gone from being completely like kind of suspicious and a bit frustrated and a bit angry. And then she just melts, right? Because his motives are so pure and so loving. And then I added in and I think it's so attractive. And then he kind of pulled me in. Like what I
Oh.
love about working with Kavan is I can throw something like that in, and I know without a doubt he won't brush me off. He will take that and like play with me in it. And so he pulled me in. And then what was so cute is then Erin just picked up on it and she's like, okay, and now I think we can talk about it. Hickam, would you like to continue on? And he was like, oh yes. Everybody just picked up on that moment and played with it. And those are my favorite moments, is when one person like me or somebody else like adds in one little thing, and then there's a ripple effect of everybody kind of playing off of it. And we didn't know, Kavan and I over the years have put in many moments like that. And they often get cut. And Kavan and I really believe in them because we always want to hold true to the fact that not only are they a great like duo and a great comedic duo, Rosemary and Lee, and now they're great parents and they've been great like co-workers, like partners in endeavors, professional endeavors, but that at the heart of it, they actually are deeply in love with one another still after all these years. They don't just love each other as like companions in life. They are in love. And it's something we don't get to see in TV, I think, very often, where you see a long-standing relationship where there is still that spark. And so I wanted to add that in for that reason, and knowing the back of my mind, I was like, they may cut it. That's okay. But then they kept it in, and we were so happy, Kavan and I. We were like, yay, because it really does add another layer to their marriage and their relationship that I think people really like identify with and feel for themselves. And then there's another moment that I'll just tell you about, because it's actually in an upcoming episode that nobody's seen yet, but I just did ADR for this episode, so it's like really fresh in my mind. There's this moment where Rosemary is coming and charging into the saloon, and she with Elizabeth's encouragement and nudge, like, you need to have this conversation. Rosemary's like, all right, fine, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go talk to this person. And I'm not going to say who the person is because I don't want to spoil anything. And so we come in and Elizabeth's like, okay, now's your time. And I'm like, all right, fine. And I go in and I go, so I would like to talk to you about, well, so there's something on my mind. I can't remember exactly the lines, but I'm not getting it out. Like Rosemary just can't bring herself to actually say it. And so I improvised, looking at Elizabeth, who's right beside me, and going, Elizabeth, like, kind of, you take over, you say it, I can't do it. And Erin just gave me this look that was like, get it together, Rosemary. and then I go, all right, fine. And then I proceed to say it. And literally, it takes maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Like, it's a tiny little moment. But I actually texted Erin afterwards and I was like, oh my God, it's just such a perfect Rosemary and Elizabeth moment. And it's so tiny, but it just is the two of them in a nutshell, is what I felt like.
Love that.
That's going to be fun.
Fantastic. And the two of you, I'm so glad you went there, because the Hearties are still talking about this scene in episode 3 with the two of you, and it was mosquito netting. People kept saying they were beekeepers, but they're not really beekeepers. It was like
they were beekeepers. I mean, that was the idea, because
okay.
if you look back, and I don't know if there's like a special shot of this, but in the mercantile, they are on display with a whole like honey bee
so it
display.
was a beekeeper hat.
The idea, I mean, but the mesh that was being used was really just like more like mosquito netting. You're correct. I gotcha. And so, I mean, just the most harebrained idea, the fact that this was going to disguise them, like.
So Angie Worden of San Bruno, California, she just laughed and laughed for days. And we just need to know whose idea were those hats. Was it in the script? Was it Barbara?
I believe it was in the script, but I think Elise, who directed that episode, was really instrumental in terms of like the look of it. And she worked very closely with both props and wardrobe to get the right netting. And like a lot of that was, and this is one of my favorite things, it doesn't happen all the time on the show, but where there will be a little footnote in the script of a prop that is going to be used. And then what ends up showing up when we go to film, we're not told ahead of time necessarily what it is. And when it's something like that, that is just like fraught with comedy, it just makes me so happy. And so we showed up, we did film it in sequence in terms of like, we filmed that bit where we're in the mercantile and then Rosemary locks onto these hats. We did film that first. So I did know that we had these hats. And so then when we were in the forest filming with the hats, Aaron and I had kind of worked out a little bit of stuff in terms of like bringing the netting up and then bringing the netting down and like how to place the hats so that they felt and looked the funniest and like getting the hats off. And there was a lot of stuff with the hats. And so that, we just kind of worked out on the day once we actually had the hats.
Oh my
There's like
gosh.
the one shot when you're scooching through the bushes and then you settle in and they're like, her hat hits yours. There was the comedy of like the two hats and hers like goes cockeyed. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. It's
Hilarious.
just
And
funny on
that's what
so many levels.
Jen Hebink of Maple Grove, Minnesota, and Ashley Tortocha of Mount Zion, Illinois. They want to hear about the blocking and the prep because yeah. How many takes did it require to film this, and
It took a
how
long
did you
time.
prep? I
It
would
took a long
imagine.
time
Yeah.
because there were, and the blocking was in the script was way more complicated than actually what we ended up doing. When Elise had broken it all down. I mean, it really was like an act of like kind of Tetris, like trying to get all the pieces. And when you're filming it, try and filming it so that you are getting all the components that the writers have written, but also in a way that in the edit, it will work. And so there were so many little things. So there were a lot of moments. There's obviously like our up and down, like so that's like two things that we had to film, the up and the down. And then there's the foot on the branch, cracking the branch. And then there was the like scooting along with the sticks from up above. You just want to be able to see these branches moving along, but then you also want to see us down low, kind of scooting along. Like there were a lot of components. It took us a lot. I want to say it took us maybe 4 hours to film that scene, which is a very long time for our show to film one
Yes.
scene, especially a scene that only has 4 people in it. But I think it was worth it because all those elements, it was a very funny comedic thing.
So good.
You
So
did.
good. Yeah. We loved last season when you talked to us about, I think what was the last shot or the last scenes that you filmed during season 11, which was the culmination of the genetic
Yes.
and the saloon and that whole thing. Is there, Debbie Kovac of Tampa wonders, without giving too much away, is there a scene like that this season that was really either super challenging or for whatever reason was?
I don't know if there was a scene that is similar to that. That was so different in scope than anything we've done, and certainly anything that's happening this season.
Yeah.
But there are scenes that are more complicated to film, and like the one with the bee hats, like that was a good example because there were so many elements. So even though there wasn't, you wouldn't classify that scene as like an action scene. There was a lot of moving parts that needed to tie in together. And so anytime there's that going on in a scene, and that can be very specific, it can take a while to film it, and it can be kind of complicated just to, like, it's literally like scratching lines off of a list, just going, okay, we've got that piece, we've got that piece, we've got that piece. And that's when you really rely on your director to have that overall view of the scene to make sure that you have all the elements in place so that when you they go into the editing room, it can cut together properly.
We're talking to Elise this week, which we're
Oh,
super
wonderful.
excited about it. It's going to be really fun to hear her. She's so talented and
Yes.
but yeah, no, I guess I recall from last year, just I'm sure that the last block is always, Peter gets the last block like every year when everybody's at their most fried,
Yes, I mean, it's intentional.
Is it really? Oh,
It's
that's
intentional.
funny.
One is he's so incredibly efficient and fast and
Oh,
upbeat.
interesting.
He's so upbeat. And that's the time in the season, you know, it's starting to get dark early.
Right. Yes.
It's getting rainy, like, and people are just exhausted by that point in the season. Like
Totally
our crew
exhausted.
and their cast are just, they're exhausted. And so to have somebody come in with that levity and that energy is such a, just a good jolt. It's the jolt that everybody needs. And his days are short. He manages to get everything we need, but he
Wow.
shoots it quickly. And we often wrap. Now, I know this doesn't seem like a big deal, but instead of filming, say, a 12-hour camera day, we might only film an 11.5-hour camera day. And that getting off that 30 minutes early, oh, it does so much for people's spirits.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it.
Mm.
It's amazing.
And
No,
especially at the end
neat
of the
to think
season.
about how those blocks work with the different directors. And
Uh-huh.
I think Siobhan always gets this same block. We've interviewed her a few times. So interesting. So there must be some particular personality or something that they bring to that block. It's cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear about Peter. And anyone who's met him or seen him online or gets that, like he does bring that energy. So that's
Yes.
cool to hear.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of directors, and if something's a director's choice or your choice, one of the scenes we loved, I think it was episode 2, was your entrance to the potluck. Girl knows how to make an entrance. We we loved it. We have a Hearty, Rebecca Ashworth Hupp of Woodstock, Georgia, wonders, was that a director's choice or was that your choice?
Oh,
With that
that was
giant
entirely
pie.
my choice. That was entirely my
Oh my
choice.
gosh.
I knew I was going to be carrying a pie and Ellie. It was Rosemary enters with Ellie and a pie. And I think I don't know if the idea was that I was going to actually carry Goldie, but she often, like Ellie, the little girl, often likes to be right with me, especially in those first few episodes. Like she's very connected to me and feels comfortable with me, and particularly in a scene where that's inside. And so I know it just sounds like a weird thing, but when we were shooting interiors with little kids, I've seen this now with all the kids that started out really young on our show. There's a certain energy inside that's very like it. You can feel an energy shift. You open that door and you walk into one of the row houses, or you walk into the Coulters or the Mercantile, and there is an energy shift because, you know, it's closed in. So everybody's like talking in very quiet voices or not talking at all. And all the equipment is in there in close quarters. And so Ellie wanted to be in my arms. Fine. But she's a big girl. Like, and so I was like at the door, and I just felt like this is kind of the first foray that we're seeing Rosemary after her kind of nerves about Lee leaving and leaving her and Rosemary and being out of town. And then now we're seeing this entrance. And I just thought I thought it was a great opportunity to see Rosemary. Like, she's making a big entrance, but it's also a little bit like harried and chaotic and like it just a bit frazzled. And I thought, isn't that exactly who she is right now? Like in this moment she's got the baby and she's managed to make a pie, but like she's running late, which is not what Rosemary's normal MO is. And so I was standing there outside the door, and I had an assistant, like a PA with me, who was listening on the radio to tell me when to charge in. And I said, you need this pie? I had no idea I'm not kidding. That pie weighed, I want to say 10 pounds. It was
Yes.
so heavy. And so that was actually improvised because
Part
I
of
was
it.
like, you guys are giving me this crazy pie to carry. I only have one hand. I've got this. I mean, I don't know how much Ellie weighs, but maybe 20 pounds. I'm not sure. And so I'm like, so I had to hold her to keep her like close to me and focused for going in the door. So I'm holding her and I'm like playing with her because there's a bit of time before we made our entrance. So I'm like playing with her, and I was like, you hand me that pie at the last second, because I cannot balance this. And so then that's why that energy kind of came of like, oh my gosh, I've got all this stuff and I can't believe I did it. I'm here, but we've got to hurry. I am on a timeline. Like, and so I just thought it was like a great way to make an entrance. And the first few times the camera was on me to do my entrance, and I would walk in and I'd do the entrance and everybody would just burst out laughing. I think at one point Aaron was like, is that really how you're going to do it? And I was like, yeah, that is.
I feel like I need to make a reel of like all of Rosie's entrances, because it's not like a one-off. Like
No, it
you
isn't.
know how to
No.
make
She
it.
does know how to make an
Yes,
entrance.
she
Yes.
definitely does. Yeah, I think the admins, we were all like, did they get that door to open on its own? Like, it just was like this force of nature.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm imagining the PA being like, "Is everyone clear? Because she's going for it." Like, I want to hit somebody with that.
I don't
door.
know. And if anybody's been a parent of a toddler, that witching hour will do that to you.
Oh yeah, it can
Yeah.
get,
You're
it
in a
can make you
hurry to
crazy.
get that
Yeah.
kid fed, you know? So I did empathize.
What I love this season, and I think it's been this season, I feel like there's been 2 or 3 times. There was definitely one in last night's episode where Rosie is talking about how dramatic other people are.
I'm so glad you said that.
That's written in. That isn't that I didn't add that in. That is actually written in.
Hysterical.
And I was chuckling. You know, I watched the episode
Hysterical.
just like a couple hours ago before this interview, and I was like, oh my God, I keep calling everybody else dramatic.
Yes, you said it to
Multiple
you said it
times.
to
I
Molly
said it to
and to
Molly. I said
Elizabeth.
Molly was being dramatic, and then
Yeah.
somebody else was a bit dramatic too. Oh, I told Elizabeth she was
Elizabeth.
being dramatic. She
Yes.
was being dramatic though about the whole like dance. You know, somebody had to
She
call
did
her
not
out.
think so. She did not
And
think
even with Molly, you kind of like roll your eyes at me, like, really? It's so
that
good.
is so funny. Good job, writers. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, maybe
Amazing.
we'll get more of those. I hope it stays
Please.
through the
They
whole
just need to,
season.
yeah,
'Cause
you
it's
need
so
to
good.
tell everyone they're being dramatic.
Well, we did get to talk with Mike Roll a little bit about the first block. And he talked about, we kind of asked with your character, there's so much physicality and you're, waving your arms. And it was kind of like, how do you keep up with that? And, I think he said something like, where Rosie goes, the camera goes, or where Pascale goes, the camera goes, something like that. But one thing that was really interesting is he talked a little bit about how you, we're going to get kind of nerdy technical a little bit, but how you are so good at like being aware of the cameras and which cameras can move certain ways. And can you talk a little bit about like how you use different cameras in different ways for certain scenes?
I mean, I know at this point, I know how the show is shot generally. Like I know kind of what lenses we use, and I know how close we get. But I do when I feel like there are moments that I personally feel like I kind of want to highlight, and often it's like a physicality moment that I want punctuated. And so I will
Yeah.
often ask the camera operators, I'm like, oh, what are we on? What are you doing on this? And then I try and, I mean, I think that's just from a theater background also, is that I then will try and position myself so that I can do the physicality, but it also is highlighted in the shot. And so I'll make sure that I am kind of like squared up with the camera so that when you do see this, it actually looks like something, as opposed to like, if I was like this and did it, it's not as effective. Right. And so, I also really like doing, and I mean, you do have to be a bit ballsy to do something like this, but like you'll notice in that moment where Rosemary's panicked about the radio show. The radio show's not coming together, and her and Elizabeth are walking down Main Street, and oh, the hideous sign, and we're going, and then Johanna, or sorry, not Johanna. So
Molly.
Loretta comes
Loretta.
up, and she comes up to us, and she hands me the newspaper, and then I shake the newspaper at her, and that, I mean, it's really basically to the camera, right? Because when we're filming
yeah.
it, Loretta is almost behind the camera so that the eye line can be close. And so I'll shake the thing right to the camera. And
Oh, how
just because
great.
then
I
it's
need
like,
to
in my
rewatch.
opinion, that's funny. That's a funny thing to do. And it really like
Yeah.
emphasizes this crazy paper thing. And so little things like that I think I just,
Yeah.
now after so many years, I'm more comfortable doing stuff like that. The thing that Mike does quite a bit, and he does it, I think, a lot with my character, because my character will often like go deep into thought or be thinking aloud, almost monologuing. And so
Yeah.
he often will ask me, and it's a very stylized thing. Not all our directors go for this, but Mike likes it. And he'll often ask me, he'll be like, so what about if you just, as you walk away, like, what about if you turn and you walk directly towards camera, which is kind of a crazy thing to pull off. But we did it in that scene where Rosemary's got this takeaway where she's talking about, I can't even remember, but it's right after I've received the newspaper, and what happens if I don't know what I'm doing, and blah, blah,
Is
blah.
it the
And I'm
wind in
talking
your
and I walk,
sails?
pardon me?
Is it when you get the wind in your sails?
Right before that, right before
Okay.
the wind in my
Okay.
sails.
Okay.
And so that's his idea. And he's done it with me a few times where he's like, what about if you do this, like, kind of walk towards camera? And it's very dramatic, and probably I'm the only character that you can get away with something like that,
Yeah.
because Rosemary
Oh, cool.
is the one who's legitimately dramatic. So he will sometimes give me those ideas, and then I'm like, well, anytime anybody gives me an idea like that, I'm always happy to run with it and make it my own. So it's very symbiotic.
For you then, is it pretty second nature now, or do you kind of process right before you shoot, or does it just really come second nature to you when you perform?
Um, I do
Or a
a
little bit of
lot of
both? Yeah.
lot of thinking about the scene
Yeah.
ahead of time. Like I mean, part of it is sort of second nature, because obviously I know this character so well. So there's
Yeah.
certain things that seem very obvious, but I really do a lot of thinking
Yeah.
about the scenes before we film them. And I always say, like, Kavan and I have very different approaches. He like like works on his lines, and he wants to know them when he walks onto set. He wants to know his lines forward and back, like have them completely locked in. And I just don't work like that. I need to run my lines and know them about 75%, and then that last 25% I can never effectively lock in until I have gone on set and I have seen where the cameras are, and I've seen what the blocking is generally that the director wants us to do. And I can have my own ideas and I make my own suggestions for sure. And our directors are very receptive to that. But in an ideal world, unfortunately, our directors are professional. They come with a very clear plan.
Mm.
And so until I know what that plan is, that plan informs how I say my lines, when I say my lines, on what line am I going to move on? Like, I don't want to throw away a line not on a movement, because if you move and then say your line, sometimes they might cut the movement. And then, you know what I mean? Like, you want
Oh,
to
yeah.
move on your line, little things like that, that you just
Yeah.
start figuring out over time. And so that's why that time between our blocking and when we actually shoot is so vital, because I finally have that last piece of the puzzle, right? Which is the
Yeah. That
blocking.
makes
So
sense.
now that I know that, now I need to work really, really, really hard to, like, lock in that last 25%, and, like, kind of, if it's a heavy blocking scene, I will practice it with the movement just on my own to, like,
Yeah.
really make it so that it's fluid.
Cool. So interesting. Thanks for deep diving on that. That's really interesting to hear, especially
Yes,
after
No,
all
no,
these
that's gonna be the
seasons.
point in the podcast where people are like, fast forward.
See, I love it. I love that. I
I
feel
love
like,
it too. And
yeah,
it's actually
yeah.
the opposite of what I would have thought, because you've
Mm.
talked before about how you love to run lines, and when you were paired with Jack, that became a, it's, you both love to run lines. And so I kind of thought, oh, she's always over prepared, which, I mean, obviously you've given it a lot of thought, but you're waiting for that last bit to inform how you're going to do it.
Mhm.
Interesting. And really interesting. So there you
And very much on the same subject, we've heard how much you prepare and how you like to run your lines over and over. And Sarah Healy of Newtown, Pennsylvania, wonders if you do any pre-filming warm-ups.
I mean, I guess the answer is kind of like a yes and no. If she's meaning, like, do I do like a, like, no, I don't do like a vocal warm.
like the choir. Yes.
But I do have to kind of like warm up my enunciation, because Rosemary does talk so fast. I mean, that's a character choice. I did it to myself. Like, I made the choice that she's going to talk so fast like that. But when it's a big speech or a monologue and there's a lot of information, sometimes, I mean, I will say a lot of the time, and not just our writers, but just writers in general, they don't spend a lot of time saying their lines out loud. And certainly I don't think they spend a lot of time saying their lines as quickly as I would say Rosemary's line. And so they'll write something, and sometimes I'll have to spend a long time working out the musculature of how to say that line quickly. And so I'm just literally like trying to say it over and over and over again so that it's muscle memory, and my mouth can just literally move that fast and my tongue can move that fast to say those lines. And sometimes it just will not happen. Like, I just can't get it. I can't wrap my mouth around it, and I'll have to change like a word or something just to make it so that it'll flow a little bit easier. But I do spend a lot of time doing that, because I think that that is so intrinsically Rosemary to be able to talk like that. And the only way you can do that is by practicing and running it so that that muscle memory is there.
We are marveling this season at the amount of dialogue our very young actors have, and even Goldie, she's got a little line here and there. And we're wondering about how it is to work with little Ellie and her development this season as the season has gone along.
Well, I love her.
We do too.
I just think she is magic. And I mean, I know there are definitely challenges to working with kids that are that young, like, obviously. But I just find you're so in the moment and you're so present because they're so in the moment and so present. And I love it. And I try and make things as normal and natural for Ellie as possible. And so usually when we're filming together, I I try and make there to be no real definitive line between like when we're filming and then when we're not filming. So often we'll be filming and then we take a break, and then I'll be like, "Oh, Ellie, let's go play and go do this," or "Oh, can you show me what you were doing?" Or like just engage her. And so that it feels very natural, that it never feels like, ooh, now I'm performing, or now it's just like, oh, I'm just hanging out with Pascale and the two of us are playing here. And now we're going to move over to this location and play over here. And she's she's a very confident little girl. She's very confident, but you can see she just kind of now owns Hope Valley. Like, she's like, I got this place. Like, I know where everything is. And she knows all the familiar faces. Cause as far as the cast, she really mostly only works with like me and Aaron and Kavan and Highland. So it's her world in terms of the cast is small, but as far as like the crew, she's around all our crew members, and they know her and she knows them and she loves them. And I think I've told this story before, but it's so cute. Is in that scene, it's in, I believe, episode 1 this season, where me and Elizabeth are walking into town and we're dropping the kids off. I think we're heading to the daycare. And so she's got Highland and I've got Goldie, and we're like walking, and it's a long thing. Like, that is a long walk and talk. And walk and talks are always challenging because it's a steady cam. And like, what people don't understand with the steady cam is like, so there's Aaron and I with the 2 kids, and it looks totally calm and picturesque. And then like right in front of us, like, so like this, walking backwards, is somebody holding a camera. And then there's another person holding that person to make sure that they're guiding them correctly, because they can't see where they're stepping or anything. There's also then walking in along with them is our boom operator, is like walking to try and like catch the sound. And then there's also like, there's so much crew that's walking backwards in front of us, like right in front of us. It's like, can be very chaotic. But what was so cute is like, Ellie's there and she knows everybody. And so we're walking and I'm holding her, and she's pointing to all the crew members and like saying hi. She's like, "Hi, Andrew. Hi." So Andrew's not in the scene. And she like loves playing with so when get to the spot where you're supposed to, if you're walking and then you land on your mark, that's what it's called. And it's often like quite a large T that's made out of tape, or sometimes if you're outside, it's like metal, but then everybody on the cast has a different color. So my color's pink and Erin's is red. And so she loves everybody's mark. And so she's always running up in between takes and like taking everybody's mark and like moving. So no one knows where to stand.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, but it's just so cute. She's just so sweet. And then she did have her little line on camera, which was so cute. That was improvised.
I was gonna say,
They drive off, and then it just was such a natural thing. It felt so natural for me to just be like, oh, do you want a snack? I don't know how many times I've said that to my own kids. And then she just goes, yeah. And I was like, oh, my heart.
Everyone noticed that.
Yeah, and our team on Instagram, we were having this discussion. We're like, we have to get a season 13 because she's getting so verbal on Instagram, and we've seen some of her
Oh my
posts from her
gosh.
mom, and it's like,
Yes. Well, the
oh.
funny thing is, and this is the tricky thing at around this age, is like she's been verbal all season. She's so chatty, like off camera, she's so chatty. But then when the cameras are rolling, because of that energy shift, she does get really quite quiet, and she like doesn't really want to say anything, which is totally fine. And so, but she loves being like kind of in with the group. Like she wants, so there was a scene, we haven't seen it yet, but there's a scene where Highland and Ellie we're in Elizabeth's row house, and they're supposed to be playing at the coffee table in the living room, and me and Elizabeth are supposed to be having, I think, a cup of tea, or no, we're baking in the kitchen, and Ellie was like determined to be at that table baking with us. She wanted to be there. So she kept on picking up this big chair, like quite heavy chair. And she's waddling across trying to get this chair up to the table, and she'd put it down and she'd be, look at me. She goes, so heavy. It's so heavy. I said, I know it's so heavy. We need to leave it in the living room. You need to go to the living room. And then she'd be like, she'd go back to the living room for a second. And then the second she saw like Erin mixing, she's like picking up that chair. So heavy. Ellie coming? Like she's just like, she wants to be a part of it all.
So good. There must be
that
a
is so-
million stories like that with
Yes,
her.
I mean, and that's why I love it so much. Every time there's a story with her, like it's just so fun and cute and always changing and dynamic. That's for sure.
Well,
We
speaking
love her
of
to pieces.
always changing and always dynamic. Your other scene partner, Katrine Wolf of Germany, wants to hear about the fun you had with or without Kavan in season 12. How much fun did you have with Kavan?
Well, Kavan and I love working together. We love it. And so, I mean, I think one of my most favorite things that we did this season was that scene in the forest that everybody saw where Rosemary's skulking around, and then the two of them come together, and it's like very sweet. I just felt like that scene was them in a nutshell. It's like high emotions that are going up and down and all over the map, but also so loving and tender between the two of them. I just thought that's where I think this couple lives in its sweet spot, right? And so that's probably one of my favorite scenes that Kavan and I did together this season.
Yeah, we didn't revisit it much last night, but in episode 3, it was revealed that he's got this sort of fear based on when his father died that's driving some of this behavior. Is that something you're going to be addressing more as the season goes on?
It's definitely something that he's addressing for
Okay,
sure,
okay.
and like thinking about, and I think it's something that will hopefully play into next season, actually, is what I hope will happen. But yeah, I mean, it's always the interesting thing with a show that runs for a really long time is that you end up learning things about your character that you had no idea about. You're like, oh, I didn't know that my father died and that this would be like a fear that would be, like little things like that end up coming about. Well, I think I talked about that when I found out when Rosemary had the whole storyline about her mom.
Right.
And when they first pitched it to me, they were like, so we thought this, like Rosemary's pregnancy could play into like her, her mom. And I said, oh my God, I've got all these great ideas for casting for my mom. And they said, so your mom's dead. And I was like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, Hearties have cast your mom over the years
Oh,
until.
yeah.
I know, there were lots of great ideas,
Yep.
but no, she's dead.
Oh,
Darn.
I'm enjoying angsty Lee. I know some Hardys are kind of struggling with the angst between Lee and
Are they?
Lucas.
So
but
I haven't really been following what the reaction to it is. I
Yeah.
loved it. And I thought
Yeah.
just as much as like, I wouldn't say Aaron and I loved playing when Rosemary and Elizabeth were at odds back in season, whatever that was, maybe season 8, maybe.
I think,
And
yeah.
we didn't love playing that, but I do think it added depth to the relationship. And I think having some conflict that really close friends have to overcome is interesting. It's true. It's a truth in all relationships. And I think it ultimately deepens the friendship. And so I know Kavan and Chris loved playing this storyline, and I think it's a good one. We haven't seen that with men on the show before. And so I think that that's really interesting for people to see.
And they both as actors are I just feel like it levels them up, especially Kavan. I love seeing that side.
Absolutely.
Both
Absolutely.
of them, Chris too. It brings us
Yes.
another level of their
Yeah.
acting that is like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yes.
They're so good, really good.
Well, to be in season 12 and to get to see things we've not seen before is pretty amazing and wonderful. As painful as a Broflict is, we'll get through it. I have confidence. You did mention earlier that there's going to be some undercover element, and we do see that Nathan is supposed to go undercover in this next episode. So I don't know if they're related, but can you give us any hints about what's to come, maybe with undercover or with the coin caper, if they're related?
Well, they are related,
Okay.
and Rosemary is very instrumental in helping. I didn't realize that was out yet, but so yeah, Rosemary is very instrumental in helping him, Nathan, come along and create this character and create a whole backstory for a
Wow.
character of going undercover. And so
Of course she would be. Of course.
yeah, right. It's a natural fit. Of course, that's going to happen.
That's
And
the
so,
spirit.
yeah, that's another fun little like pairing of the two of them, trying to sort that out and work on that together.
Anything
Sounds like
else any other little hints you want to drop about the rest of the season and what we should look forward to?
Well, I do think so. It may be out that Nathan goes undercover, but there is somebody else who kind of haphazardly ends up going undercover with Nathan that is going to be a lot of fun for people, I think.
Oh,
boy.
interesting.
Okay.
Pal the pony goes undercover, and the plot twist that Hardys don't see coming.
That's hysterical.
Well,
Just created an image in my mind that
I
I
know,
love.
same. Well, Pascale, we really wish we could borrow Rosie's xylophone, the hand xylophone, to wrap up our chat today.
Okay, so that's another example of what I was talking about. No one told me there was going to be this xylophone for Rosemary's radio hour, and I showed up, and Mike was like, was going to say he was practically dancing, but in fact, he actually was dancing. He was so excited when I walked onto set, and he showed me what it was, and he goes, so I don't know how you're going to use this, but I think this has to be part of like the opening of the radio show, or maybe the closing of the radio show. And so he and I sat there trying out different, there was only, I think, 3 strips. I had very limited options, but it was like trying to figure out the exact 3 things that three notes that were going to be the opening, and then they're slightly different for the closing. And the two of us were having so much fun working that out. And so then when we went to film it, that moment where you see Rosemary go, "Welcome to the Valley Voice Radio Hour," and it's like bing, 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 or whatever. And then it kind of was humming for a long time. So in the moment, I just was like, oh my gosh, sound is going to hate me if this thing drags on for much longer. So I put my hand on it to stop, because of course it's like where it's radio, so it's all going to be sound. So I put my hand to stop. And then that moment, I was so pleased with that, just how that unfolded, and like that I figured out to stop it like that, that I actually genuinely looked up at everyone and was like, and then they kept that in.
So that was a little
Because
improv
it's like,
too.
I was
It
so
was
excited,
perfect.
and everybody thought it was so funny that
Yeah.
I was so excited about it, that then they kept the whole moment in it. It's just like Rosemary's moment, but really, I mean, I think it was just Pascale being like tickled about like getting to ding, ding, ding.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
I
Perfect.
just love the
So-
image of the director being like, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I have a
Oh,
little
he was
surprise
so
for you."
excited. And that's one of my favorite things, is again, showing up on set, and then there's a prop that I had no idea what it was going to be. In the case of the xylophone, I didn't even know that that was going to exist. Like, I had no idea. And he's just like, I've got to show you this, Pascale, you got to come see it. I've got this. I was like,
Oh,
okay,
so
we
good.
got to work this out.
Terrible. So
So
cute.
good. Well, yeah, we're really even more wishing we had one to rub. We'll have to find a sound effect.
We're
to
gonna
plug
get
in.
one, Jeanette. We're gonna
I
get one.
know, totally, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pascale, for spending some time with us today. And we really got to deep dive. I really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thanks
Oh,
for being here.
good. Oh, good. Me too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Hearties, for joining us. And as always, you can find us. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And like Marg mentioned, we're on all the podcast platforms now, Apple and the other big ones, Spotify, etc. And then, of course, we're ready for another new episode Sunday night at 9/8 Central. And we will see you there. Make sure to use that hashtag Hearties. And thanks for joining us again for another Heart to Hearties.